Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest today is Representative Joe Hubbard, Democrat from Montgomery. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the raid by the AG on Green Track. And Representative Greg Wren pleads guilty and points the finger directly at Mike Hubbard. Oh, Mike, what a tangled web you weave. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt. I'm joined as always by the V-Team.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome all. Let's get to it. A toxic atmosphere in Montgomery as Representative Greg Wren pled guilty to using his office for personal gain. Barron, what's happening?
Well, you stated it succinctly. He pled guilty to using his office for personal gain. He was arrested. He was convicted. The interesting thing is when you read through the plea agreement, it's deadly and it's devastating. And one of the conditions was that he continues to cooperate in an ongoing investigation. There was only one name other than Greg Wren mentioned in that investigation, and it was Mike Hubbard right there in the plea agreement.
And you know, Van Davis, the special AG, said that this investigation goes to the highest levels of the state government, doesn't it?
Well, it's really a sad week in the state of Alabama. I mean, for me as a Republican, and we've waited all these years to get the majority, and then look what our leadership has done and these elected officials done. I mean, it saddens me, but, you know, when you do wrong, you've got to pay the price.
Yeah, Greg Wren is a 40-year friend of mine since junior high school, and I hated to see it. But on the other hand, it makes you wonder if he voluntarily resigned. I don't think that's true at all. And I think some of these other people that have resigned may have gone to the grand jury too and given their story, and that was part of their condition to get out. And I think there's going to be more to come.
Well, and you know, for the viewers out there who have not been watching us in some certain markets throughout the state, I think in October I talked about that as well. It's not a coincidence that we've had 22 elected officials, either House or Senate members, that have just decided after one term in the legislature, they're not running again. I think it all leads to the roads in Lee County.
Well, I wish Greg Wren to repent for his crimes, but I certainly don't feel sorry for him. He betrayed his oath of office. He betrayed the voters. He betrayed the people of Alabama, and yet he gets off on a misdemeanor. He should have gone to jail. That's my opinion.
Well, again, when you get off on a misdemeanor for something like that, there's two things I noticed about that. One is he did get a misdemeanor when, if you read the plea agreement, it says he basically lied under oath, gave a materially false fact to the grand jury.
Perjury to the grand jury, which is serious business.
But the other thing is, it means they want his testimony that badly. My guess is they really wanted to get him on a felony, but thought, you know what, we'll give him the misdemeanor if he'll continue to play ball.
Yeah, I think he's too valuable to the overall end goal and the end results of what they'd like to achieve, to really bring down the acts on corruption in this state. And I think that that's what the people of the state
Yeah, they got
want.
the memo when they're going after the Lake Lunker.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, this all started back in June of 2013. We reported that Greg Wren and the Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard, inserted language into the general fund budget that would give American Pharmaceutical Cooperative, Inc. a monopoly over the entire pharmaceutical budget of the $700 million Medicaid fund in Alabama. And that's exactly what happened.
It was created where only that company could meet the specs and the requirements of the bid.
Right.
And Greg knew he was on the payroll of that company.
Sure.
And the Speaker knew the Speaker was on the payroll of that company. That's in the plea agreement.
Right.
What is unclear in the plea agreement, or what's stated in the plea agreement, is that Greg may not have known the Speaker was on the payroll at first, later learned the speaker was on the
And
payroll.
you know, Greg doesn't like the speaker and vice versa. He's the only committee chair that didn't have a committee office. He operated out of his cubicle. Greg was rumored to have run against Mike Hubbard for speaker one time, and Mike never let him forget it.
Well, I also think you have, you know, that corporation has a full-time hired gun lobbyist.
Bill Patrick.
Right, who's friends with Wren for many years and friends with the speaker. So he may have not told each other that, hey, I've hired the speaker and hey, I've hired Wren. He wanted to get the strongest guns he could get to make sure he 100% locked in the deal.
Well, I tell you, one person that did know about the deal after the fact is Jim Sumner, the head of the Alabama Ethics Commission. I interviewed him on the phone, and he told me, yes, he was aware of the contract that Hubbard had, and he'd approved it sight unseen. I've got a tape of him saying
I'm telling you something, that is unconscionable. We should not have an ethics commissioner or director that says, oh, I trusted the individual that bought me the contract. I mean, that is egregious.
Why have subpoena power, Barron, if they're not going to use it?
Why are people using the ethics committee? I hear this time and time again. Well,
It's a rubber stamp.
the speaker couldn't have possibly done anything wrong. He got it approved by the ethics committee. Let me tell you right now, Jim Sumner has failed. He has faltered in his job as being the overseer of these people. You have multiple people on state contracts. It wasn't just them. And I don't want to go down the list of people, but it wasn't just the speaker and it wasn't just Greg Wren.
If you look at campaign finance reports, there are people living out of a campaign fund. And all you do when you go to the Ethics Commission, they stamp received. They never review your finance report. And Tom Watley has totally lived out of his campaign fund. Went to the Rose Bowl or Pasadena for the game, paid American Express $7,000 unitemized. That's egregious, to borrow your word, Claire.
I tell you, Jim Sumner's ethics, he could run a bordello in Bangkok as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, he needs to go. The Attorney General's office, I mean, it really is outrageous what has occurred.
Jim Sumner needs to resign. This is evidence of his incompetence or his complicity, but he needs to resign.
We got about a minute and a half.
He's got good hair, though.
He might not keep it long. Back to this thing, this deal that Hubbard cut to put the 23 words in, this is also potentially a federal crime, isn't it?
Well, of course. I mean, there are lots of these things that are going to overlap between state and federal jurisdictions.
Because those were federal funds. Medicaid's a federal.
Right. You start messing with Medicaid, and that gets to Medicare, and that's federal funds, and that's some serious risky business. I've seen other people, legislators and elected officials, go to jail in other states.
And I've heard at least one representative out of his mouth say he had talked to federal investigators, maybe not in a grand jury.
Why has the governor been quiet? What's the governor doing?
He's got a 70% approval rating and he's standing election.
And he's going to let them hang them
the
on
farther
stage.
the farther away from them he is, the better off he is.
Here's what I've got to say. All right, you're watching The V. We'll be back in just a moment.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
When someone steals your hard-earned money, it's a crime. Doesn't matter if it's a pickpocket or a politician. And in Alabama, the politicians are taking advantage of us every day. Corruption, pay to play, backroom deals. They're getting rich while our families suffer. Now the legislative leadership in Montgomery is blocking real ethics reform. How long are we going to let them get away with it? Call your state legislators, tell them to clean up Montgomery, and sign the anti-corruption pledge.
Welcome back to the Voice of Alabama Politics. Our guest today is Representative Joe Hubbard, Democrat from Montgomery. Representative Hubbard, thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you, Bill.
There's been a lot of action going on around the state with the Attorney General's office. You have decided to run for that office. Why?
That's correct. Look, I felt called 4 years ago, Bill, to step up and to offer myself for service in the Alabama legislature because I felt like we needed a strong, independent voice there who could speak truth to power on both sides of the aisle. And I felt like for the past 4 years that's something we've been able to do. And as I've watched the politics in the state evolve over the past several years, I've realized that there's a much greater need for that type of service outside the four walls of the legislature, and that's in the Attorney General's office.
You are a law and order conservative Democrat, aren't you?
That's correct. My record in the Alabama legislature reflects that.
One of the things that we have heard constant complaints about our current Attorney General is that he has had to recuse himself from the two largest investigations in years. That's the Alabama State University investigation and the investigation in Lee County that we believe is focusing on Speaker of the House Mike Hubbard and others. How does the Attorney General get, what is he thinking?
Well, you know, and that's a big issue. When you have the top law enforcement official in the state of Alabama have such a conflict of interest that he cannot fairly and unbiasedly prosecute crooked politicians and backroom deals, you've got a problem, Bill. Now, some say, well, you know, he recused because he knows these people. Look, knowing somebody is not the basis for a conflict of interest.
Right.
Conflict of interest is what you have when you are involved in the actions under investigation, which is, I suspect, what we're dealing with here. Now, the Attorney General has acknowledged that he recused, but he refuses to tell us why. And I think that in and of itself is pretty telling.
About 18 months ago, Alabama political reporter, I wrote a story that showed where Luther Strange, the candidate in 2010, accepted $25,000 in donations from one of Mike Hubbard's PACs, and the very next day he spent $25,000 with one of Mike Hubbard's company.
Sure.
25 in, 25 out. This is what we believe is the reason that the Attorney General has had to step down from this very, very serious case.
Well, listen, if Luther is a part of this pay-to-play scheme, Bill, then you've got an even bigger problem than what people suspect, okay? You know, the office, the public office, is not a place where politicians ought to go to get rich. And unfortunately, that's a lot of what we're seeing in the State House today. It's a lot of what we're seeing in the courthouse today. And I'm afraid that's what we're seeing in the Attorney General's office as well.
This week, Representative Greg Wren from Montgomery, same district or same area, pled guilty to using his office for personal gain. Would you be willing to talk to us about that?
Well, I think it is unfortunate that that has come to play, but I think it's only the tip of the iceberg, Bill. You know, you look at what was alleged, what was stated in his plea agreement, the actions he pled guilty to. The fact that he was able to plead only to a misdemeanor speaks volumes about what is coming down the road. The only way a good prosecutor would accept a plea like that is if the person pleading was helping that prosecutor bring in a bigger fish. And everything I've read on that particular case suggests that that bigger fish is already on the line.
Well, and that is what we're hearing as well. Matt Hart, a career prosecutor, is heading that investigation along with Van Davis as the special AG, two men with stellar reputations. This is sort of a repeat of the way that Hart has investigated his other cases. He gets some plea bargains out there, then he starts getting indictments. You're familiar with this style.
Sure, and I would expect to see more plea bargains announced in the coming days and weeks. And I think as these roll out, you're going to see who exactly the target is. And I think that target is going to start to feel the heat, Bill. You know, my grandfather used to say you could always judge how hot the water is by how hard the frog kicks. I think you're going to see some kicking frogs in the next few weeks.
You know, speaking of kicking, we kind of thought this raid on Green Track on Monday might have been a smoke screen to cover up some of the things that came out on Tuesday.
Sure, look, you know, I don't think there's any doubt that was the intent, trying to roll out what would have otherwise been a big announcement ahead of what the AG's office knew was already coming in order to push the announcements of those police back, purely politically motivated. But keep in mind, too, those raids themselves were politically motivated, Bill. The court in 2011, the last time Luther tried to raid the establishments in Greene County, the court there held that there was no basis for the condemnation of those machines because they were not illegal. There is a court opinion. Luther has already lost that issue. And the fact that he's trying to bring it back now on the eve of an election, on the eve of political indictments, of which he has no part, I think smells to high heaven of political maneuvering.
Well, we've got about 1 minute left. Tell us how you would handle things as Attorney General and why people should consider your candidacy.
Well, Bill, it's quite simple. I'm offering an alternative to Luther Strange. Luther Strange campaigned for 4 years after losing the Lieutenant Governor's office to be the Attorney General of the state of Alabama. And I'm running to show the people of the state of Alabama that AG does not stand for aspiring governor. You know, at the end of the day, Bill, we need an Attorney General who is not only going to be tough on crime, but he's going to be smart on crime, and he's going to show up. In the rural parts of the state, he's going to knock down meth houses. In the urban parts of the state, he's going to stand up and fight violent crime and drug dealers. We need an Attorney General who is going to fight and prosecute crooked politicians, not get involved with them. We need an Attorney General that's going to stand up for the people of this state when they're taken advantage of by big corporations, not lobby for the big corporations. And we need an Attorney General who's going to show up and defend the victims and their families when it comes time to consider the release of these inmates from jail.
You that man?
I am that man.
Well, we want to thank you for being here. We've invited Luther Strange to appear on our show. So far, he's turned down every indication, every invitation that we've given him on advice from Kevin Turner. You're watching The V. We'll be right back with the V Team. Stay put.
The V is sponsored by Jonathan Barbie for Public Service Commission, MediaWorks Communications Video Production Services for all your video production needs.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
What is Mike Hubbard hiding? Mike Hubbard is hiding thousands of dollars he secretly took from the teachers union, known as the AEA, and deposited into his hidden foundation. Just recently, one of Hubbard's staffers blew the whistle and released the names of his donors to a watchdog group. The Mike Hubbard who accuses and bashes anyone he suspects of taking AEA money is the same Mike Hubbard who took thousands from AEA and hid it in a secret foundation. What else is hypocrite Mike Hubbard hiding?
When someone steals your hard-earned money, it's a crime. Doesn't matter if it's a pickpocket or a politician. And in Alabama, the politicians are taking advantage of us every day. Corruption, pay to play, backroom deals. They're getting rich while our families suffer. Now the legislative leadership in Montgomery is blocking real ethics reform. How long are we going to let them get away with it? Call your state legislators. Tell them to clean up Montgomery and sign the anti-corruption pledge.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Joe Hubbard running for Attorney General is a long shot, but I think he's one of the guys that might be able to push that envelope.
Well, you know, I'm a Republican there again, and known Luther all my life, but I will say this raid in Greene County has been nothing but a platform for Joe Hubbard. There's no telling how much free earned media he can. I bet he's gotten $250,000, $250,000 worth of free earned media, or he will get that in the next week.
Well, and the other good timing for him is this corruption stuff breaking with Republicans at the highest level.
Right.
Luther having had to recuse himself. I mean, if a Democrat can win statewide in Alabama, it's this race this year.
Well, and Joe is old school Democrat, Southern Democrat, really. He's not some kind of Nancy Pelosi liberal or anything.
Any state north of Kentucky, he's a Republican.
Yeah, right.
Let's just be honest.
And he has some family lineage, and a lot of people remember his great-grandfather, Senator Lister Hill, so he's going to get a lot of votes from around the state because of that,
Well, that's the reason we have so many hospitals in Alabama, because of the Hill-Burton Act. But speaking of Green Track, nobody here knows more about the raid on Green Track than our own Sherlana Spencer, who was there with straight hair and a black turtleneck on and everything. Right?
Yes, and let me say, for the spirit of full disclosure, I represent Green Track and have for a number of years. And one of the comments that I had a reporter ask me was whether or not the Attorney General's office had tipped us off in advance of the raid. And my response was I would have been dressed very differently, because I spent about 4 hours in the hot sun and 80-degree weather on asphalt in a black turtleneck. The folks in Greene County obviously are very upset about this. Not only was Green Track served with a search warrant, and by the way, there was no equipment or bingo machines seized from Green Track, but there were 3 other facilities that were also raided, where the Attorney General's office did seize a number of pieces of equipment and money. You know, the problem that they have in Greene County is that Amendment 743 that authorizes bingo specifically authorizes electronic devices, and it defines bingo. So it's going to be another fight for us. Several people have said this was a smoke screen.
The timing is very odd.
And let me just tell you how odd the timing is. The search warrant was signed for all of these locations the previous Thursday on March 27. It was executed that Monday, the last day of March. And then the very next day, the Alabama Supreme Court issued an opinion that related to the bingo operations in Greene County in a case that had been pending for nearly 3 years. So there's a lot of timing issues that we will be looking at in the months to come.
Well, in politics, generally, there are no coincidences, right, Baron?
Well, when you have those 3, I was not privy to any of that. When you have those 3 pieces of events, I mean, as a lawyer, my jaw just hit the ground.
Yeah, that's the timing.
That's not the way courts are supposed to work, I'll tell you that.
Courts shouldn't be political like that.
But this is a purely political issue.
So, but Green Track actually has an amendment that allows them to have what they have. Is that correct?
Yes, there is an amendment that was passed overwhelmingly by the people of Greene County that specifically authorizes electronic devices. It specifically defines bingo. And in the machines, I can only speak for Green Track. I can't speak for the other operations, but the machines that had been in operation at Green Track have been tested numerous times by international testing labs, something that the Attorney General's office has never done, and we've asked him to come in and test them.
Right, right. Well, it sounds like a stunt at least, and maybe some type of conspiracy. Could be. We know politics is like that. Speaking of something that's come up recently, Barrymore and says on a tape that Speaker Hubbard will kill 100 jobs in Enterprise, Alabama, which is Barrymore's hometown, if Josh Pipkin doesn't get out of his primary race against Moore. What is this? Framing people and threatening people?
In the story, it was kind of egregious. The language that was used, talking about Pipkin, and says, I'll bring down holy hell on him. This is the Speaker of the House of the state of Alabama, Mike Hubbard, talking about bringing holy hell down on a political opponent, a fellow Republican who's the treasurer of the Coffee County Republicans. I mean, this isn't some rhino sneaking around, parading around as a Republican who's a Democrat.
This just gives you a tip into the eyes and the power of Mike Hubbard and what they will do and to what lengths they will go to achieve their personal goals. And it's very scary out there.
But it's just not him. I mean, the person who was involved in this is a sitting elected official in Alabama. And one of the things that I think that all of this that has happened in the past week shows us is that the Republican Party is not above the kind of tactics that they have accused the Democratic Party of practicing for years.
Which is something that's frustrated Claire, me, Jack, so many other Republicans who fought like hell to get these people elected, frankly, and then have to turn around and watch what we put in office is,
how's
is
that
more
ethics
corruption.
reform working out for you?
Yeah,
Okay, and the bottom line is the Republicans are now in control. Okay, we're now in control. You've got a majority. When you start having a
Well, not if you
majority,
keep having
you have a
days
little
like Monday,
infighting.
you won't.
Okay, so let's let the democratic process, democracy, work itself out. You have opponents, you beat them fair and square. You don't go around threatening them and to threaten to pull jobs from your county if you don't pull out of the race. That's like.
And we're not talking McDonald's jobs. These were upper middle class, high-paying, very highly skilled jobs. 100 jobs in enterprise they were threatening to kill.
Well,
look, as far as I'm concerned, the folks in power killed 1,100 jobs in Greene County this past week. So, frankly, this is just another 100.
Well, it's all disappointing. I mean, and Bill Armistead, who's the chairman of the party, you know, he recently came out, attacked John Rice, who's a stalwart conservative.
Former state senator, Republican, long time ago.
He hasn't said a word about all these other secretive pacts. I'm beginning to say that, you know, we've got a slinky chairman.
Let me tell you this about Armistead. What disgusted me about the whole Armistead deal?
I'm disappointed in him. He's my friend, but I'm very disappointed in his actions and what he did. I think somebody pushed him that had a little power over his neck, and I think he's not strong enough to withstand that, so I think he can't.
I want to know why Yellow Hubbard, Cliff Sims, and his Yellow magazine, news magazine he puts out on the internet, I want to know why he had a complete story written 42 minutes before Bill Armistead's speech, his press release came out.
Those coincidences we were talking about just a minute ago. There's very few coincidences when it comes to politics.
Well, not only coincidence, they'd need a DeLorean to go back in time to get that story ahead of time.
But the charge that I understand about the John Rice's organization, the Alabama Foundation for Limited Government, is that it does not disclose who its contributors are.
It's a 501c4.
And it's a 501c4, and according to the IRS and the IRC rulings, you can engage in what's considered social welfare, and you can engage in this type of discussion about issues, even though they may be politically charged, so long as you're not making contributions or you're not impacting directly or indirectly a campaign.
Well, it's been a great discussion. A lot more coming up next week. We are the voice of Alabama politics, The V. You can catch us every Sunday on ABC channels throughout the state and every day at alreporter.com. Stay tuned. There's a lot happening in Alabama, and you want to know.